Welcome, welcome, everyone who's joining. We're going to wait just a minute or so for others to come. Wait 1 minute. We'll be precise.
You're the one leading the plane, so we're just waiting for takeoff.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got the gear. You've got the expertise.
Well, that's scary because we're in the pilot seat right now.
I'm getting all competitive. I want to have the most well-attended live that David has ever done.
All right. It's 12:31. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I'm David Roberts. I write the Substack Sparks from Culture, and I do tend to talk a lot about what we all refer to as the New York City bubble world. And one of the components of that world, I guess, is most prominently fictionalized, on Gilmore Girls and
Gossip Girl.
Gossip Girl.
Yes,
Sorry,
Gilmore Girl was a little bit more country, I think.
Gossip Girl.
Small town.
Small town.
Obviously,
If you're from New York City, you call it country.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, Queens is the country.
We're going to focus on this world of the New York City private school and I guess, sort of pros and cons. And I have with me the two women who run the podcast and the Substack, but I think their podcast is their main delivery of everything that they have to say. And I put it in the chat. It's called Mic'd and Medicated. And I subscribe, encourage everyone else to subscribe. And with that, Eva and Caroline, there we go. Could you give brief introductions and then we'll go right in?
Sure. I'm Eva Heyman.
I'm Caroline Leventhal.
And we are the co-founders and co-hosts of Mic'd and Medicated, which is currently a podcast that we drop every Thursday. But you can also find us every day on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. And we also love the Substack community. And we have a weekly Substack newsletter. And I guess just for this conversation, I'll share that I have 3 children.
We should talk about our point of our podcast, which is that we say the things that you're thinking, but don't say. We are always oversharers because oversharing leads to people feeling like they're not alone. We are mic'd and medicated. Okay. So we like SSRI medicine and we're unfiltered. So this will be we are very respectful that we're on David's podcast, but we are going to give you what you want to hear.
Yes. Thank you, Caroline.
Sure.
Unfiltered, unafraid, and importantly, unexpert, especially for this conversation. So we'll be sharing our personal experiences. And I think just as context, David, we should say our
experience with New York City private school.
Thank you. So I have 3 children, one who went through K through 12 and is now in college, another who is graduating, also went through the private school system K through 12. And then I have a third child who is in the middle of it, right at that fun age of puberty.
And you, just to add on to Eva grew up in the suburbs of Westchester, not private school, but your husband grew up at the same private school that your sons attended. I grew up in New York City. I went to an all-girl private school, and my daughter's currently there, and my son is at the private school where Eva's sons went, which is how we met. So, and I'm actually moving to Miami because I'm definitely overloaded with the New York City private school system. So, so you'll hear all the good stuff. And I'm also the same. I graduated or went to private school around the same time as David's oldest child, I believe. So he has kind of the perspective of being a parent. When I was at private school, I started in 94 and graduated in 06.
Not only is it hard to let you talk, David, but we're going to point out how much older you are.
No, that is not true. I just wanted so that if I'm saying something, David can
be Caroline's father. We get it.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Don't look like you could be my father, okay? All right.
Thank you. That's high praise. And with that, so my first question is, New York City private school is very expensive. So you'll tell us what the tuitions are. And I guess my question is, if you can afford it, is it worth it?
Okay. So it's right now for kindergarten. It's absurd. It's $72,000. And then we looked also just to understand price range, like in 2011, kindergarten was 37,000. So that's a huge increase that doesn't really go with inflation.
That's a 90% increase.
Yeah, that's huge.
If the private school tuition had increased according to inflation, it'd be around a 45% increase. So basically double inflation.
Okay, so if you're going from when I went graduating 2006, when David had kids, I think it was 100% worth it. I think I went to the Spence School. I loved it. It made me who I was. It was a different time. New York City was a different time. I don't have enough experience with having kids right now because they're only in third grade and kindergarten. I do think right now, because of our Mayor Mamdani has made he's made some that he's going to do in public school. Like he's going to potentially get rid of the gifted and talented program or push that to third grade instead of kindergarten. And he also was trying to bring AI in earlier, which parents did not want for public school. So I do believe parent applicants, like for students, was up 25% this year because of Mamdani, what he wanted to do for public school. So I think it might be more worth it now for some people than it might have been in the past.
And I think it speaks to the insane wealth in Manhattan that there was an article I saw that the, tipping over $70K a year for tuition didn't actually depress admission applicants.
Well, I think that's what I just
said. People
said.
thought that might be the threshold, and it's still not the threshold.
Which could be because of what's happening with public schools. I think what's so unfortunate about New York City is it just I think in suburban areas, public schools are really great. And I think there are a handful of great public schools in New York City, a handful of not. And it's hard. It's hard to the environment. It's and you change lower school and middle school and upper school. And I think it's not what it should be for what we pay for taxes. I feel like.
And can I briefly answer your question, David? You asked, is it worth it? And I think that in New York City, that's not the question I think one asks themselves. I think it becomes almost
like, what are the other options?
It's almost like the easier of the options, because it's not like you can just go to public school. You just sign up and go. It's actually incredibly competitive to be in these public school systems too. And you're competing for spots at the better high schools, middle schools.
Well, I think there's lotteries, so it's not even competing. You really luck of the draw. And
no, they take tests too. It depends on the school, but
you take tests, I think, for more of the gifted schools.
I think I've heard that if you're more adept at working the system of the different schools as parents, you have an advantage. So there's a knowledge gap, I think, or familiarity with forms and so forth. So, one of the things that we've discussed is that for a lot of kids, it's not just the tuition. There's a lot of other things that go with it. And it feels like there might be sort of an arms race in terms of, you pay your $70,000, but is that just the beginning?
Well, I think, and this kind of is still answering the last question, even if you have a child who can, pass the test to go to Hunter, which is an exceptional, public school, or they end up at Bronx Science or Stuyvesant or some of these more competitive public high schools, they call them the G&T schools. Nest is another one. I think the other factor a lot of families consider is community. Now, I grew up in the suburbs and everyone went to one public school. So I was like, let's go to public school. I think for my husband, who grew up in the private school system, like Caroline, he felt like I made my best friends. So there was also a piece of it of wanting a cohesive community.
Or being part of a network. I think there is there's a priceless component to New York City private schools. I think there's people who live in many different cities, around the country who might identify certain schools in New York City. They might know of Collegiate or Horace Mann or Riverdale, but could you name private schools in Chicago? Maybe not. So I think the branding of New York City private schools is also what people pay for. I think when I was growing up, it was 94. I was starting kindergarten, so Mayor Giuliani had just kind of started. So New York City wasn't in the best shape, and I think most people, the 90s suburban areas were really booming again and were raising their kids there. So I think the scarcity component wasn't there. There didn't feel overcrowded, or I felt like a lot of the competitive people almost were not living in New York City, if that makes any sense. And I think now as a parent, it feels like a lot of non-native New Yorkers or people who grew up in those suburban environments who did always know of these names of these schools wanted to be a part of that, and then kind of brought that competitive nature of like keeping up with the Joneses to New York City. And then obviously with a $70,000 tuition, you're in a certain pool of people. And I think competitive people who can get to the top and afford that, they want the best in everything for their kid, whether that becomes the soccer tutor or starting the college tutoring process in 8th grade. Like, I use the services at my school, which was the college counselor. And like now, I mean, Eva can tell it because her kids are now, 2 of them have graduated. Like, when do kids start getting tutored? Like in like the arms race, when does it begin?
Well, I would answer it a little differently. And I think we used to live in sort of an abundant mindset as parents where your kid could go off the golden path and still end up succeeding and having a wonderful life and being successful in, kind of conventional terms. And I think now, because it's more of a scarcity mindset among parents, because there's fewer spots at the colleges, it's an international market. You have also with all of the DEI efforts, being a privileged white kid from New York City is no longer in vogue. So like my husband says, when he graduated, half his class went to Ivy League schools. That was not abnormal. Now, very few, because these schools want diverse colleges. They don't want to take 25 kids from New York City or one private school in New York City. And so I do think the scarcity mindset creates so much anxiety in parents. And so rather than letting your kid kind of figure it out and maybe later in life come to being a great student, or, parents are so anxious that if my kid, even I'll give an anecdote. A friend at a girls' school said that the upper school, chat, which came from an administrator, was if you get an A-, you can rule out Ivy Leagues.
I mean, first of all, who even wants to go to these places anymore? They're all changing.
But I think to answer your question, that's the arms race. It's so many kids for fewer spots, and I think this also tips into the surplus elite issues we have in our society.
Hold on, I also wanted to. I think that's what I was saying, right? So when we were all growing up, there was the competitive nature had changed in New York. Now people want to live in New York. It's so expensive that you have to literally be the top of whatever game you are to be in these places. So you have the most competitive parents, in this environment. That's part of the reason that I'm moving, is that I feel like my values of what success is for my children are not in line with these schools anymore. And that means having a childhood, having more play base when they're younger, being outside, not having anxiety develop when they're,
But I think
6, 7 years
not
old.
in line with the communities, not the school per se. Because I think a lot of these schools.
Well, I know.
Don't
I think
want
the schools
to
have
be-
changed because the parent body are so competitive. Like, they're taking their kids to Russian math and all the shit where the schools are like, don't do that. Like, don't send them to extra this. But when parents don't listen and they do that, then they sort of change I feel like the limbo stick is use it as like an opposite analogy of like getting lower and lower, because parents are like, well, we're more flexible, so lower it. And, so kindergarten, what used to be like nap time and, more of like a nursery school experience, is now like a first grade. So, that's what I mean. The values.
And let me ask this about the tutoring, because that you can go certainly overboard. And my impression is that where it used to be, maybe you had a child who was really legitimately struggling in a particular course, needed some extra help. But now it's like, as you said, getting a B+, you need a tutor to get yourself up to an A.
That wouldn't have been the case when I was
worse
growing up.
than that now. This is something that really riles me up. I have really gone against the grain on this one, because I feel that if you need to tutor your child to support their existence in a school, they're probably in the wrong school. However, at some of these schools, it is an open secret that kids are being tutored nonstop. And it starts young. I overheard a conversation in first grade about super tutors that are $1,000 an hour for first graders. And it does not stop. There are people whose kids are doing Latin over the summer before Latin is offered at the school. So they go in already
What's the
knowing
point of
Latin.
school? Why are we paying $72,000 if we can't teach them anything?
The Russian math is very real. It's I don't know anything about it because I've never done it, but my understanding is that a lot of classrooms, so many kids in the class take it that these poor teachers have to teach up from their curriculum, and then
that's what I'm saying.
The kids who
Wait,
don't
Russian math isn't?
Yeah, they all take Russian math.
2
My
plus
son
2 equals 4 in both Russia and the
I don't know
United
what the
States,
fuck
does it
Russian
not?
math
I don't
means,
know
but
what
I
it is
know
either,
it's
but
like all the kids do it. And this,
I would
one thing, this is funny. And all the teachers tell you not to do it. They also tell you in kindergarten, don't sign up for so many extracurricular activities. Play dates are the most important. So I agree. My kids are fucking exhausted at the end of the day. Guess what? There's no one to play with.
That's true, actually.
All the kids are overscheduled.
There is and again, I think it goes back to this arms race. It may be well intentioned. At best, it's well intentioned, and it's just this pervasive anxiety that the world is getting harder and harder to be successful in. AI taking jobs, fewer spots, at all of these.
Do you really think it's? I just think.
But at the worst, I think it also could be this child as status. Like people want to be able to say, my kid is going to X or my kid is doing X.
Well, maybe this is also a New York thing because I just saw a comment that said, I know a lot of people who do Russian math for their kids in public school. I don't know if that was a New York City school, but maybe it's just our environment of like constant competition.
Well, and what about the parent?
What
about Sure, go ahead. And I have a question.
No, I just because this is important. I think the tutoring thing, I just want to be clear. It's not, in some cases, I'm sure it's a kid struggling. Can they have a tutor? But what we're seeing and what we hear from teachers is it's hard for teachers because kids are coming in already knowing what they're teaching and going advanced. So like, when I started school with my 20-year-old, there was regular math, advanced math. There's now at a minimum 3 levels of math. I think some kids might be exceptional. They might teach themselves math.
None of these kids are. No, it's all bullshit.
That a lot of times parents want their kids to differentiate. So it's like more, so that you can be, higher in the
I have a question.
That's going to be a nervous breakdown, Okay,
but I have a question about the parents because I remember when we were growing up and had, kids who are now 32, 35, 38, one of the things we prized was downtime on the weekends, like just for our own good. We didn't necessarily encourage our kids to do, when none of our kids were particularly proficient in sports, we were absolutely fine with that because
that's how I am.
It's great, just, potch around with tennis. But anyway, but like, doesn't this really take away so much freedom from the parents?
Well, I'll tell you, because David, I'm like, Eva and I are actually kind of both like you, but my son, his sports piano, great. It's not, he's really nice hands. But like, he needs to move, right? And New York City is not exactly open your door kind of thing. There's no middle ground here. There is no soccer once a week. It's freaking 7 days a week when you're in first grade. First of all, none of these kids are going to be messy, that soccer guy, whose parents are wasting their childhoods. But instead of enjoying their family time, just like you said, and having, a relaxed time, like people look at us like we're nuts. So like, what did you do on Saturday? And I'm like, we watched 4 hours of cartoons and a little iPad time. And people are like, oh.
I can say from my perspective, my kids are athletic, but Caroline is absolutely right. There's no middle ground. So what would happen is we'd sign up for baseball little league, which was once a week on Saturdays. And like my husband would come home and be like, they can't even play a game. They're horrible. Because if anyone has even like a pinky finger worth of talent, they're putting their kids in a travel team.
How about soccer tutors? There's soccer tutors, David.
Unfortunately, I think like I thought this was just pure cheating, but in lower school, there would be parents who would be giving their kids private lessons in sports like baseball, like soccer, so that their kids would be better as part of the team. And I just like, at what point is enough? And I hope these poor kids are happy, but there's a lot of anxiety among the kids.
I feel like
I used to play. I used to throw the ball around with my kids.
No, that's not enough anymore. Also in New York, where are you doing that? You're in the park where like people are smoking crack and yes, they are. You smell weed everywhere. I'm gonna let's throw a ball.
I want to ask a little bit about like how aware are the kids that this is maybe a little kind of strange, or Or is this they just grow up and this is like and maybe Eva, you have a better sense of it because
Yeah,
your
you
kids
said,
have gone through and they're older.
I think like I think that some of this is very misguided, and that even though the parents have the best intentions to create kids who have, optionality and opportunity and exposure, some of these kids I think are miserable. Others probably are used to it and even enjoy the kind of go, go, go.
no,
But
no one can
I
enjoy
see it
that.
among my kids' friends. There are some kids who literally have 1, 2, 3 activities a day, and, I'm thinking of one kid in my head who says, like, routinely gets home at 9 p.m. Like, so, like, they have traded family dinner for, like, that extra, whether it's fencing to Russian math to whatever's going on. And I also think, to your point about weekends and prizing that family time, I also think parents are willing to divide and conquer. You've got one kid you're taking to a tournament in Atlanta, you've got another kid you're taking to a tournament. And I think that it's pretty unheard of here to say, like, my kids aren't allowed to do that because we prize family time. I think
I
that's
mean, I'm someone like that. I think, and it's hard. It's really hard to be part of this community because, again, I'm sure when you were again raising your kids and I was here, it was normal to not be
uh,
overscheduled all the time. And like, I had a brother who was in and out of private schools because he had his own issues, so I didn't have that bar so high. But I think people have completely lost the plot of life.
I will also
Wait,
say, because this is a real anecdote.
we like to talk if you guys haven't figured that out.
When
I'm
my
talking
oldest
sick, Eva. Here,
Thank you. When my oldest was a freshman, I went to a PIA, that's Parents in Action meeting, and it was
Yeah.
where it's called Teen Scene. And they have the actual teens from all these private schools sit in a horseshoe at the front of the room. And I was a little horrified. These kids were kind of saying, like, you want to know why we drink and do drugs? Well, look at the schedules we keep all week. Or you guys ask us to be perfect students, perfect athletes, have 8 extracurriculars so we can get into a top college. And I thought back to my childhood where anything I did was very intrinsic. And I'm not saying there weren't tiger parents at every age,
completely
but I
agree.
think it has become it's quiet. I think some people, it's almost like, the kids in college where it's like, I didn't study and then they get an A. I think it kind of goes under the radar at a lot of places. It depends what community you're in. Some communities you're overt, and some communities you don't want to talk about it, but you are hard charging.
I also think there's a lot of parents who, instead of seeing their children as, you know, as their own people, as their own plant that you kind of, you obviously have to be a parent, but that plant is going to sort of grow the way it wants to grow and you can just help nurture it. I think people see their kid as like a carbon copy, as an extension. And they, whatever dream that they did not fulfill, or they want to live vicariously through that child and put an enormous amount of pressure. And it's really selfish and unfair. I think like my son loves piano. I didn't force it on him. I mean, he was 4 or 5 years old. He's like, I want to take a piano lesson. And we did it. Like, I never forced him to practice his homework. Now he wants to do it. But the stress, he's so stressed about taking like a piano test. I'm like, then we're not going to do it. This is
Right.
not, you're 9. Like, you have your whole life to be stressed. But we have just missed the whole plot. Life is so short. It's so complicated on the outside. Look at social media. The reason these kids are gone awry is because there's no parents around. They don't value that. They can't brag about, oh, we spent 18 hours on the couch together as a family, laughing and bonding. That's not a commodity to people. People should stop looking at others. I think social media is a huge issue because there's so much voyeurism, and they see parents being like, oh my God, why is this kid playing soccer and my kid should be on the team, or da da da. Where like when we were all growing up, you kind of did what was best for your family.
I do think because I've experienced now 2 college processes, that it does come out during that
Is it processes or
how
processes?
how insane people, like, I had no idea that there were kids in my kids' grade who were, founding nonprofits in Uganda, or building robotic arms, or I'm not making this stuff up.
Right.
Like, at a minimum, they're working in a lab at Columbia, or they founded, an organization. And I think colleges are starting to see through it, but you have to wonder, like, did these kids have any free time, and to just have regular extracurriculars, like, I'm a captain of my team, I'm on the,
No, that doesn't matter anymore
I'm in
because
the
now
Well, it's
sustainability club.
you
That's
know,
considered light.
listening to what you're saying, you can almost, I stress the word almost, understand what was going through parents' minds in the whole Varsity Blues scandal, where they, most of them got prison sentences for all the fraud that they committed because there was this guy who said, "Hey, I have a
Right.
shortcut." And
Was that
I
with
think that
Lori Loughlin, right? The Full House
yeah,
mom?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Although a number of reasonably famous people got caught up in it, but it was a lot. It wasn't like just one or two parents. I think there were quite a few. So, what about the what I'll call the social aspect of it? Like, where do you spend your summers, or how
Oh,
are
yeah.
you getting
Dirty
out to
summer is a
ski?
verb here,
Right.
okay? It's not
But
it's
how, like, even with my kids, sometimes they would come home and have heard things about money things that were just like really, really? Someone said that? Well, we don't, that we sort of frown upon that. But I have a feeling now with everything online that there's so much information available that probably also is a um some kind of a pressure that must affect the kids. Like they know
Yes.
whose parents are, uber wealthy and are just wealthy or not, and maybe comment a little bit about
Well,
about
even,
that.
like, for play dates, so I have, like, little kids, but they don't mean to, obviously, little kids don't know, like, I live in a really I think a nice apartment. I don't have, like, an art room and a playroom and a science lab, but, when you have, like, a kid will be like, "Oh, where's your, like, playroom?" or "Where's, like, the art room?" And I'm like, "You're looking at it. This is the table here, we're gonna play here." And I'm like, "Did you just make me feel poor?" Like, "You're 6. What the fuck is wrong with me that you just made me feel poor?" Like, that I got it this kid it's too
Actually,
much.
that's funny because I once had I had a 9-year-old at my table who was telling me how amazing it was to fly Emirates, and I really needed to do it.
I'm dead.
But what I was gonna say
How about when
is
your daughter was FaceTiming with a girl on a yacht in Capri with her nanny? I was like
Caroline was like, "Who is that person?"
I'm like, "Well, can I be her nanny? Can
But
I get"
here's what they're missing is, like, I think that there are families who send the nannies on vacation. Like, that is not just an urban legend. But I don't know, I think it's very school dependent. I will say, in the positive way, I don't think it is a mindset,
You're in
that
La La Land.
that I don't. I think that the parents, depending on the community standards, they adhere to them. And so I think if you can find a good school where everyone wants to level the playing field, you don't
I
need to see
totally
it.
disagree with you.
However, if you're not at that kind of place, I was horrified. It's just like having, some class and dignity and elegance, but my child would come home and say, "Oh, so and so said that they live in a $10 million home. How much is
Right.
our home?" And I'm like, "None of your
Yeah, it's like, "Go
business."
fuck
And
Right.
yourself.
what? Or so and so only flies private. So I
Oh,
do think a
I
lot of
had my
people.
kids wait, this is funny, sorry. Talking about a private plane. They were playing, like, I don't know, they were playing in Central Park, and they were playing on a jungle gym, and one of the kids was like, "Okay, only you can come in because 'cause we're gonna play private plane." I was like, "Okay."
But like I see somebody just said something about public airplane, and like I will say, my child now is somewhere where lots of people have never flown. So I think it
You
all
mean never
depends on the
flown
never flown anywhere, like never been on an
you
airplane.
know a lot of kids who've never been on an airplane.
Yes, I do now, but I didn't before.
From where?
My current school versus my former school.
Okay.
And so I guess what I would say is if that matters to you, and it should, you as a family model what you want your kids to see, and then you find the communities that also have
But
those
But do you
values.
think the kids and do you think the families sort themselves a little bit? Because what I found looking back on it, there were the fast kids and the fast families. And then there were the kids who were not so fast. And we also had parents in action meetings. But but I always felt the problem was that you'd get, I don't know, 30% of the parents would come, but those were the parents that kind of cared about
they
these
didn't
sorts
need
of
it.
social things. The other 70% were the ones who you know, weren't so interested. Like, I don't need this. I'll just do whatever the heck I want. So anyway,
I agree, and I think for me too, is like and it tended to be about the kids who were faster, their parents weren't around. And I'm not even saying just working all the time because obviously it's so expensive to live here, but like parents who just it was clear that the children were not the main priority. They were socialiting, gallivanting, and those were the kids who could get away with everything that they are getting away with. Like my dad was working all the time, but my mom was around watching me like a hawk. I was terrified of her. I wasn't going to fuck around. I used to go in the taxi cab and give her the medallion number so she knew where I was. But I think also talking about values of just in general, like I think growing up in New York in a different era, it was very gauche to kind of show your money. Like if someone had a driver, you did not get parked in front of the school. It was like a no-no. Now you see all these schools and they're lined up with SUVs and it's like my driver this, my driver that. Like it's assumed that you have a staff of 10. And it's really there's kind of like there's no sense of pride of, and I'm a great outsourcer. So I have nothing against outsourcing. I'm a great conductor. I wish I had a chef. I wish I had all these things. So I'm not down on it. Good for you. But like, it's just assumed that you outsource everything and that there's no pride in doing things yourself anymore.
I think that's what you're saying, David, about the social piece. I think among the grownups, I find New York City, like there's a lot of people who seem to think that ascribes something good to them when they say, "Oh, my driver," or "Oh, my Hamptons house," or "Oh, this," or "Oh, that."
And I'm like, ugh.
And
although
it's
I like the
very
Hamptons.
tacky. But I think kids, sadly, don't grow up thinking that. And so then they do it without realizing it's tacky because that's just what they're around. And then I think if you're really douchey, isn't it? What do they say? Apple never falls far. If you're douchey, chances are your kids are douchey.
And I also like have developed the ability to see that the douchier the person, the more insecure they are, obviously. But kids don't always have that. I think with social media, it's harder. But I think just the generational wealth has changed so much. And, I think, when I was growing up and my mom's grew up in the city and her parents grew up in the city. But on my other side, my dad's side, he was the first to go to college. So I had grandparents that were like afraid they didn't want to, spend money to order at certain restaurants. Like, even though they could, it was, I grew up, with perspective. And I think the lack of perspective from a lot of these children is hard when you have kids much older, right? So like my parents were at a younger age than my grandparents were alive and they were involved. Like parents are so much older now because it's so expensive here and they're not spending any family time. So I think who knows where their values are coming from. If your values, aren't coming from time at the dinner table or grandparents or whatever, then you're going to get them from the douchiest kid who you want to be friends with.
Also, I would just say, and this really shocks me, because growing up in the suburbs, there's really nothing happening during the week for kids or parents. But I am really just blown away by how many kids in middle school are on weeknights going and having dinner, like Bella Blue or Three
like
Guys.
Going out?
Like
What?
without parents, like they're
At
having
13.
dinner. Yes.
That's insane.
And I say, and my daughter, who would love to be participating, we say nothing's happening during the week. We're a family that is home. We have family dinner, but I just never ever expected that would be an option.
Well, I think in New York City too, especially with Uber and everything, there is a gained independence much earlier than in the suburbs. You're just not as dependent on your parents. Actually, Uber might have changed the game for the suburbs too. I'm not sure. But I assume, here, like Eva's 13-year-old can like go to dinner across the street. She doesn't need Eva. So that's another reason kids grow up faster.
And one other thing I would say is I'm sure this happens everywhere. This may not be a New York City phenomenon, but I think it's this bubble we're talking about. The birthday parties, the graduation parties. I mean, these kids have experienced more parties that are insanely nicer than my wedding was by the time they're 12 years old.
Well, you celebrate everything for them. I do make the sign.
But like, who needs, 100-person birthday party when they're 1 year old at like a club? It's just insane with like a cake that, like a Sylvia Weinstock level cake.
No, it is actually absurd. And like, I'm so lucky that my kids they have very good taste, but they are private. Like they like to be their quantity over quality, which I have no idea who they got that from.
You mean quality over quantity?
Yeah, quality over quantity. Like they'd rather have 2 friends over and like have it really great versus like some big in your face party. But it's like party planners and wait staff and look, I did a bigger first birthday party for my son because I was stupid and thought that was for him and it was for me. But I've made it like I survived my first year of being a parent. And also I just saw something. Hold on, wait.
About Caroline.
I was
teasing.
fucking out. All right, I'm a little bit of a narcissist. I just saw a good question. It's like I've been to some very fancy bar and bat mitzvahs. This bothers me to no end. Like Jews are we're both Jewish. We're in a place where like we need allies and help. Like having the most out of touch, disgusting bat mitzvah is so not what we need right now. And then posting it, right? It makes me want to vomit. That's not what it's about. They are disgusting. I've even heard apparently if you have a bat or bar mitzvah later in the year, the kids are so overexposed and like over it, they don't even go for half of it.
Oh, this is a great.
Like, come on.
And
they are like $1 million.
My kids who are used to receiving something at the end of a party, like even, the graduation parties for my senior, every time we go to something, they're getting swag to take home. So I'll never forget, we were at a friend's in Connecticut. And it was like a barbecue in the backyard. And my little kid walked up to the host and was like, "Where's the party favor?"
I was like, "It's the party." Actually, right, the party is the favor. Like there's a great Mad Men scene where I think Peggy is complaining to what's his name in Mad Men? John Hamm, his character.
Yeah, I know who he is.
Okay, John Hamm character, right?
Draper.
Don Draper. And she's complaining to Don, like, I feel like you don't appreciate me. There's no thank you. And Don's like, that's what the money's for.
Right.
That's what the salary's for. That's the thank you.
Exactly.
It's like the party is the party, not the party favor. It's just, kids are just insane.
I can get on my soapbox, but I just feel the amount of accolades these kids get for things that are their job, like the first day of school, senior year, all the parents line up and are clapping as the seniors go into the school. The last day of school, there's an ice cream truck for all the seniors.
That's like the participation. Like everyone gets a participation.
I believe in no participation.
I get a nice senior lunch and I get a graduation party, but it's like, I'm like, no wonder these New York City kids have failure to launch. They're probably
first of all, that's not New York City. I think that's a generational
first day of
thing.
Job and they're like, no one's clapping for me.
Okay, first of all, that's a generational thing.
That's
like,
I agree with Caroline. I think it's not
it's
just.
Like,
I don't think that's a. Yeah.
No, it's not New York City. Wait, hold on. No, it's because of Instagram too. And it's like, I'm guilty of like every year I need to do a professional photo shoot with my kids. My mom's like, what the fuck is this? Every year? Like, I don't know. We did it once you were born or every 10 years. Someone did professional photo shoots. Now every photo is like the happy, we call it the hashtag blessed.
So, Caroline, I'm going to center on you because you are moving. You're moving to Miami, and a bunch of different reasons, but one reason is some of the things that we're talking about where you feel, I would say, out of joint somewhat with the way you want to raise your family and have a family life. So maybe talk a little bit about what you think will be different in Miami. I think it's Miami that you're moving to.
Yeah, Coconut Grove, which I think is Miami,
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. I know, like, Eva will be like, what do you think? You're going to have, like, nobody who's fancy? Like, no, I don't want to live in a place where it's, like, shitty and, like, I'm, like, on a farm because I can't be a trad wife, okay? So I know what I'm getting myself into. But I do feel I'm putting my kids in a Jewish day school. I think the values are just going to be different and more aligned with my values just because I think that's just, what it is. It's also like 1/4 of the cost. So I think you're going to get a different breed of people who wouldn't maybe be able to go to a New York City school. I think it's a suburban. You open your door, your kids can play. I find like my kids, everything is such a production here. It's like even to go to the park, I'm like, fuck, it's sunny out. I have to do that. I have to take them out. Like I'm so happy when it's shitty and I actually don't have to do that. Which sounds terrible, but like, I got to take them to the park and I got to put the dog's leash on and the shoes and the this and then all of this. Someone has to go to the bathroom. It's like just have a little bit of ease so that, their childhood can feel like they're kids.
Actually, I need to jump in just to
centered around me, Eva.
Just to have all your kids at one school is kind of a rarity here. So right now, if she has one kid at each school, you need multiple people for pickup, multiple schools that are begging you for money. And so
different schedules.
Being somewhere where both of your kids can be in one school. And in New York City, it never ceases to amaze. Even at a co-ed school, often people will say, I have 4 kids at 4 different schools.
Right. And I think, there's just so much at your fingertips here. So people feel this constant need to be busy. Where I think if you have a nice environment, you're more inclined to be okay to like stay home and your kids are swimming. I have a feeling like there'll be other things that will drive me nuts. Like I'm sure people are much more competitive sports wise, but even the fact that for after school activities, like I sign up a month before they start is like insane. Like I have to set a reminder a year in advance. So I think for me as a parent, like my son's going to be 10. I'm like, holy shit. Like it's almost more than half of the time he's at home with me. I don't want it to be where he's constantly like in Ubers going to a tutor or going to this, or I want family time. I want to slow it down. And I think there's a thing called the New York Minute. And I think it's true because the time is so fast here. And also with technology, New York, the stimulation I think was perfect amount because you got it, you felt it, you could go home and kind of check out. Now you can't. So to have nature and the sunshine all the time, yes, it will be very hot in August when I move. And I might be being like, what the hell am I doing? I think it's going to be the right thing for our family. And
so you brought back a memory from that predates all of your experiences. When I was in school, I remember coming home, getting a big hunk of Jarlsberg cheese and bread, and watching like 2 hours of situation comedies before dinner, which of course by then I was hungry for. But that was my
That's what I
after
did.
school.
I didn't eat Jarlsberg cheese, but I would grab a snack and I would watch Full House, The Nanny, Seinfeld, like
Right.
all of this stuff. And,
I got to say, my kids still have that type of setup and they turned out just great. And you know what's
Right.
most important? Like, my kids are well adjusted. They are not anxious. And I have a friend who's a therapist,
none
and
of your kids have anxiety.
she says to me, literally, well, that's from me because I have anxiety. But she says to me, literally, all these kids who end up at all these Ivy Leagues after being top of their classes at all of these private schools in Manhattan, they all end up in my office. They're shells of themselves because they're like, I don't have somebody telling me what to do anymore and I don't know who I am.
They have no compass. But I also think it's a moral compass too. I think our schools, unfortunately, have really lost that moral compass in so many ways. They're struggling to define themselves. So if you have children who are not growing up with family time or grandparents or anybody around, you're not having a school community that's teaching you like true moral right and wrong. And then you don't have a compass of instinctively what you're attracted to. Then, like in terms of piano or this, I think these kids are just overwhelmed and lost. And I also think we've told them that you have to be happy all the time and successful at everything. Like, how can a person be happy all the time, be Andre Agassi, be Einstein, be this? Like, we just haven't explained the realities of life. Like, it's very rare that you're going to be amazing at anything. You might, not that you want someone to be like striving for mediocrity, but like,
It's funny
you know what I
because
mean?
when I was raising my kids, the buzzword was resiliency and
Right.
grit. It was
Grit.
around like when
Right.
Angela Duckworth wrote that book.
Yeah.
And I used to joke like everyone here wants to manufacture it. It's like they want to snowplow and make sure their kid doesn't like have any trouble. Like, you didn't make the team, call the coach. You got to be on the paper, call the teacher. Yet they wanted to manufacture it in these like very weird ways. And I'm like, no, that is the grit. Like, your kid doesn't make the
Right.
team and like they learn.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I
I
did make the
agree.
team and the world's still turning.
Actually, this brought me, Eva, because I've learned a lot from her, talked a lot about like benign neglect, right? I think in today's era in New York City, it's very hard to benignly neglect your children.
So
And I don't mean like
I think that's a good, right. It's
It's an
and it's probably
underrated parenting
it's
strategy.
not go have dinner
it's an
and fend
arms
for
race,
yourself.
right? Right. One person does, there's a, I remember reading an article, I don't know when it was, recently, about how in a parent community, if someone says it's unsafe to have sleepovers, it's like every other parent says, well, you know, I must be irresponsible if I let my kids have sleepovers. It's like there's a lowest common denominator
Yeah.
effect
But
because
it's real. Like I
yeah,
don't think New York City is a place where you can have a 9-year-old go to Central Park by themselves, right? Like it's not the
yeah.
same as saying to my son, "Oh, go out in the backyard." I'm watching him, but like he thinks he's having this like independent
No,
moment.
no,
Like
that's
that's what I mean,
true.
right? You can't it's very hard to do that. And, you know, yeah, I don't know. The benign and I think a lot of things look, the only time I'm ever calling a soccer coach or anybody is if they put my kid in this unsafe situation, which they did.
Yeah, no, I always stayed out of it. I have been
They're the
very
expert. I don't
clear.
know if my kid's good at
I have been
soccer.
very clear that I think parents have not helped the situation at the private schools because I think there's so much meddling now. And again, it might come from a good place, but there's so much
That's because a lot of us don't trust these institutions anymore, to be fair. Like when my parents sent me to school, like they're like, you guys know what to do. Like you academics, everything. And I think it's not that we don't trust our schools academically, but I don't know if the philosophy or the values of the school are aligned with mine anymore. And I think that's where potential meddling could come in. Versus, I would not going to meddle about like a grade of a homework, like of an assignment.
No, but everyone knows, like, 4 kids get awarded something, and then all of a sudden there's a 5th kid. How'd the 5th kid get it? People know. It's like an open secret.
There's no I in team. No, wait, no, shit. What's the expression?
There's no
I. There's some, you know what I mean? Like, I don't believe in the participation trophies, any of that. You should like lose, and then I'll be like, all right, well.
Or you should, I think the main thing is kids are not building competence and resilience. And what's happening is, and this really blew my mind, the tutoring doesn't stop in college. It continues. It doesn't stop on the first job. It continues. And
Really?
so this tutoring industry, which is massive and growing,
crazy.
I was floored, but I have a friend whose husband is a tutor, and he tutors first-year analysts at banks.
That's insane.
So it's like, when can you say, because part of life is learning and doing for yourself and building that competence.
When do you take the training wheels off, in the sense of like, if they're always on, or if they're always on at that point, right?
And,
I mean,
and to be a parent is to, you want your child throughout. You love it when they come to you and actually ask for your advice, and then you can actually give it to them, right?
And I think schools don't know what to do. They almost have to turn a blind eye to all the tutoring, because for all these teachers, they're making $800 an hour in the afternoon and evening tutoring kids from other schools, because you're not allowed to tutor at your own school. So it also contributes to a breakdown of the community, because it's like, do I stick around all afternoon for the kids in my school, or do I go tutor somewhere else?
Like,
and those parents who are stretching to pay and who may not pay the full tuition, they can't afford these things. So it sets up a real class.
This will blow your mind. At Trinity, when you get a financial aid package, I shouldn't have said the school name, but whatever, you actually, tutoring is included because it's assumed.
That's insane. See, okay, so and again, David, you'll confirm with me, but like my teachers would help. Like you pay tuition, and like if you had free periods, and like they would help you. I mean, look,
that still happens at some schools, maybe
but
not.
I mean, look, I am ADD, and like I obviously like kept looting my textbooks like at school, and so the school's like, maybe she needs some help just with some executive functioning skills. But like, unless the school said you need help or SAT prep, like your teachers were expected to help you and meet with you. That's the whole point of private school, is to have that. So it's so absurd, and it's really sad, because I love New York City, and I do love the school that I went to, and I hope the pendulum swings in a way of just making it more, I don't know, normal. I don't know, these kids are just set up for like, you hear them as seniors, and they're like, oh, in this graduating grade, we have like 14 book publishers, and this one won this award. It's like, dude, you're 18. What do you have to look forward to?
I do think this is a problem for communities like ours all over. I don't think it's,
what do you mean by ours?
Exclusive to New York. I think when you're in a high-achieving striver community,
I think New York is at the top of the totem pole with insanity, because I think people have to.
It may be, but I agree with Eva that you hear about this in many other communities, and in the the wealthier suburbs that have public schools that are very competitive, and have same sorts of parents, or very similar sorts of parents. Yeah.
Being competitive is human nature. Like, I'm sure if you go to like a farm somewhere, people are like, well, my cow produces, 300 ounces of milk. Like, you're going to find a way to compete. It is true. Like, I do believe you want a healthy sense of competition. But I think that we have to figure out what that is. And the goalie post, it's just the goalie posts are too far, and it's just setting everybody up for not even enjoying your time on this earth. And I think because of the Stockholm syndrome of New York, I do think we have this New York or nowhere thing. You kind of have to justify it. Like, well, I go here because, it's the best of everything, or of the best tutors, or the best this. Like, if you don't justify it that way, then I think people wouldn't live here as much. You know what I mean? That makes any sense? Like,
so we're nearing on around 50 minutes, which is a good chunk of time. And I think thank you. You guys have been terrific. But any closing thoughts from either of you?
Does anybody have any questions, or do you not usually take audience questions? Or
well, they could put them in the put them in the chat. If anyone has questions in the chat, we can.
Hopefully, you'll be in a blue bubble in Miami.
I'm not really blue. I'm sorry, but that's okay. I guess, probably like I like a lot of blue things.
I guess my closing would be that individually, I think like in the private school system, my kids who have been through it have had exceptional teachers. Like, I will say that teachers who really care. So I think there are systemic issues that work against being able to do all the things they once did. And in terms of like the tutoring and everything else. But like, I compared to my public school education, I think my kids got exceptional educations in terms of the academics. So from that perspective, but I think that I also protected them from a values perspective of a lot of the craziness. And it'd be hard not to, sort of at least acknowledge that, like, there is tragedy too often in our city where kids feel there is no out, there's nowhere to go. And I think that the levels of, anxiety and extra time and medication and all of these things, it's more than just there's more kids today than there were then. I think my 2 cents would be that, like, it's so much more important to be somebody who knows you are able to take care of yourself, get things done, like be successful in your own right. Because all you're teaching your kid when you're getting tutors left, right, and center is you're not enough.
Right.
I need to supplement you to be like someone I'm proud of.
I think what I would add too is, like, growing up here, I think my teachers, again, were also exceptional. And like, they really had a visceral, like, joy of me getting better at something. They really cared and were invested. I think the issue is more of parent body than the actual schools in some level. I think for any parents out there, I think just spend more time with your kids and think about what are the values that, what would be on a eulogy for you, or your, in that sense, what are they going to remember you for? Pushing them to, like, have the most soccer tutors or the most time? It's like, no, it's like you make the mark on how people feel when you leave a room or how you're with them. Like, spend time with your family. And
Actually, I need the talking stick one more second.
shit.
Sorry, David. I will say, when my kids were little and I was working full time and I was really anxious, this is pre and SSRI, I would on a Saturday be like, we have to go to the Met. We have to go to the MoMA. We have to go
so
see a
annoying.
Broadway show. And I realized later on with therapy and a lot of other things is, like, the value of spending time with your kid is equal or greater just sitting on the couch, like watching the sports team they love or watching a TV show, than going to do something enriching if they're not enjoying it. Like,
do
meeting
things
them
for
where
you
they are
and your family, not for the gram.
Take interest in what they want to do, and that's the best quality time you can spend.
Well, I'm glad you both touched on the topic of teachers, because I will say that I can do this comparison. So I went to Riverdale in the 70s, and then all my kids went there, and it was total improvement. I mean, they had generally wonderful teachers who were really motivated them. And I look back at some of my teachers, and they were just like, where'd they come from?
Right.
They were like, it was a big. So the private schools, from an academic and teacher point of view, I think and I'm sure it's true across the country, have really raised their game. And I think that is the biggest asset of any school. It doesn't have to be private or public. If you have a great set of teachers
who are invested in your children, I think, that's important. And I think that goes for parents. I think, look, we can be our children's greatest teachers too, even if I don't know calculus. It's like, it's not always about that. And I think just love goes a long way, I guess. I mean, it doesn't pay for a New York City tuition, but it does go far.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that happy note, thank you so much, Eva and Caroline. It's been a pleasure. Hope we get to do this again. And
Thank
everyone,
you for having us.
Go on Mic'd and Medicated.
Here's the
I'll
spelling.
say Mic'd and Monicated. Mic'd and Medicated.
But it's
Right.
not the amperstamp on Instagram. It's Mic'd and. But
Okay,
we'll put it. Maybe you can email everybody.
Yeah, I put it in the chat, and as you can see, Eva and Caroline have a lot of fun with all their topics, and they're a pleasure to listen to. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys for watching and
love
listening.
your Substack. Thank you. This was our pleasure.
Bye.